Zionsville Board of Zoning Appeals, the March 2nd, 2022 meeting. First item is the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Janice, you can take attendance, or Wayne, or
I will take care of that.
you will take care of it. Thank you very much.
From a formality standpoint, I want to introduce the new members first before we do a roll call.
Yes, please.
So at the far end, Kathy, please introduce yourself.
My name is Kathy Postlewaite, and I am a resident here in Zionsville and have been for about almost 30 years.
Andy Bakel, also a resident of Zionsville, lifelong.
That said, we'll start with roll call then.
Welcome to the BZA.
All right. So, Mr. Jones,
Here.
Mr. Mundy,
Present.
Mr. Lake,
Here.
Postlewaite,
Here,
Mr. Paquel.
Here.
One of the first items on our docket is we need to elect a new chairperson of the BZA. We have two options. One, we discussed kind of before the meeting, if we want to take a minute. No, I think
Do we need to do that first?
the new members sworn in.
New members have already
Jumping
administered their
Yeah.
oath. That's been
Already done.
previously done.
Jumping in.
Great.
So that's been taken care of. So we have that issue off the docket. So we briefly spoke amongst ourselves up here, and there is potential that we might have somebody nominated to take over the chairperson right off the bat. And if that's the case, then I will shift back to my normal spot on the end of the bench. Or if we need to take a month to kind of sort it out, we could put it off till the April meeting if that is somehow agreeable. But this discussion amongst ourselves.
I would nominate Mr. Mundy to be chairperson.
I would second that.
A reluctant willingness.
Okay. If so be, shall we take a vote?
So we can do what would you like to put together a slate?
Yes, we need a slate. So we need a,
Vice president, right?
So I would nominate Larry, Mr. Jones for vice president.
I would accept that role.
I'll second that.
Then we need a secretary.
I
Correct.
would nominate Wayne DeLong for that role.
I'd second that. Would you accept?
Happy to serve.
There we go.
I think those are our only three spots, right?
I think so. We don't have a treasurer. Do we have a social chairman?
I would vote for that.
All right. So we have a what do we call it? A docket,
You have a slate?
a slate. So all in favor of the slate, I guess we vote on that.
You're all here, so not necessary to do a roll call.
So we just
call the question.
call the question. All those in favor of the slate as proposed, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Any opposed? That's it. All right, we go. So we're good to go.
Your work is done.
My job is done, thankfully.
My condolences to the group tonight. So this is a maiden voyage, so we'll try to get it right. First thing I guess is to ask if there are any petitioners here who are going to request a continuance this evening. Will you come to the podium, please?
Jay Davis. I'm a second, I think, of them. There's 2205-M requesting a continuance to the April 6th meeting so that I can get a letter from the engineer who originally proposed the work that we did. He is currently in Florida. So Gary Ladd was the engineer.
So Mr. Davis is requesting a continuance for 1 month to the April 6th meeting for docket number 2022-05-M.
I'd make a motion, we accept the request for continuance.
I'll second.
Made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll see you back on April the 6th.
Yes, sir.
And now we'll back up and review the minutes from our January 5th, 2022. I think there are 3 of us who were here for that meeting. Are there any changes to those minutes? No changes. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Have a motion to approve. Is there a second? And a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Minutes are approved.
We need to address that. First.
Well, Mr. Mundy, I would pause for a second. You do typically ask if there's anybody online who would like to be recognized. So
Thank
it's
you.
An opportune time to do that.
And do we have anyone online? Mr. Rust? Okay, thank you. If we'll ask you to promote them if they wish to speak at any point during the meeting. We also have had a request, Mr. DeLong, I'll ask you to verify a request that 2022-10-DSV 9180 East 350 South in Zionsville had requested a continuance to April the 6th. Is that correct?
Turn to,
That one, they requested a continuance and it met the automatic continuance schedule. So that's why there's nobody here this evening.
All right, thank you. That takes us to continued business. First item on the docket is 2021-65-UV J. Mullen. And looks like Mr. Andreola will be representing them. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. For the record, Mike Andreoli, 1393 West Oak Street. I'm here tonight with Jeff Mullen. Jeff owns the property at 35 East Poplar Street here in Zionsville. To kind of get your bearings with regard to that, it's on Poplar, immediately adjacent and east of the former Nancy Noel studio that is being converted and was approved to have some improvements made and a different moving into a different use. I've not quite had a request like this before. In many instances, we've explored opportunities to try to create into the village residential district, perhaps move some of the village business districts into that. And the boards have been reluctant over the years to modify the village business district or move it into the village residential district. It's been something that hasn't been done for many, many years. In this particular situation, the house that's being occupied by Mr. Mullins, very old structure. Staff report, I think, does an excellent job of calling it out and giving you the facts that you need to know. So I won't belabor them and go over those. But suffice it to say that Mr. Mullen wants to continue to live there. It's in the village business district. A single family home is not permitted in that zoning classification. Right next to it, to the immediately to the east is the village residence district. So if he was in that district, there wouldn't be a problem, but he's in the village business district. And utilizing a single family home has never been used for business, but he went in to get a mortgage and the mortgage company called him refinancing. The mortgage company called him out on it because it's not a permitted use under the ordinances. Now, Zionsville has a procedure that allows you to go in and get essentially a grandfathered non-conforming use status. But in this situation, the problem with that is if the residence would burn down, that would no longer be appropriate. So the mortgage company has denied him. He wants to continue to operate and live in the house and use it as a residential structure, even though it's in the village business district. Rather than do this by rezoning, this is a perfect example of why use variances can be appropriate. We don't have to rezone a piece of land that would otherwise remain in the village business district. We can just grant a use variance if this board would approve that. So that's essentially what we're asking for, is a use variance to operate this and use this as a single family residence. In addition, along with that, there were two, and I'll go right to that and mention that so that I could do them together. There were originally two development standard variants that would be necessary in order to comply with that requirement. One, and that shows in the staff report, deviate from required buffer yard requirements in the village district. That we are withdrawing that. We participated with staff and worked with staff with regard to that. And staff has determined that that particular variance from development standards is not necessary in this particular situation. So we are asking that the required off-street parking, there's never been off-street parking or off-street parking for this particular home. It's 1/10 of an acre. It's not a very large home at all, but Mr. Mullins never had off-street parking for this particular home. He's always parked right in front of the residence there and always been able to snag a spot for his house there. So at this particular point in time, I'd be happy to answer any questions. It's simply no more elaborate than that. And I think, as again, staff has done an excellent job of providing all of the background facts that you need without me having to go through those. Thank you.
Mr. Mullins aware that he's going to have a busy neighbor? Parking, yes.
Yes, he is, and he knows that, and he hopes to be able to go over there and perhaps sit on the patio and have something to drink when that opens at some point. But he did work with them. They needed some access through between his house and theirs, and he worked with them and has a good relationship with those folks and worked with them to provide that access some time ago, and that's shown on the actual surveys and site plan. So thank you.
Any questions for the petitioner's representative? Hearing none, is there anyone in the audience or online which would like to speak to this petition? If you would state your name and address, please.
Hi there, I'm Heather Lusk. I live at 285 West Hawthorne Street, and I am president of the Village Residents Association. I'd like to speak in favor of granting this request. You have more than once seen the opposite situation, as Mr. Andrielli mentioned, where businesses have tried and succeeded many times in coming into the residential area. Not all of these businesses take care of their properties like a homeowner would. The Mullins have been trying to take care of their property, and they are struggling right now because of this mortgage situation. Their property was never intended to be a business, a shop, a restaurant, a service. It's just a strange situation impacted by zoning. You guys all know that zoning in this town isn't exactly perfect. There are quirks and imperfections. This seems like a very easy and logical fix. It is a fix supported by the Village Residents Association. We had a meeting last month and discussed it, and not one person thought there was any reason at all not to grant this request. So please, we hope that you will move forward with a favorable recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any others? Any online? No online? All right. Could we have a staff report, please?
Yes, I think Mr. Andrielli did a good job summarizing the request here. The petitioner has a legal non-conforming use of their single-family residence in the Village Business District. And from what we can find, it's always been zoned commercial as long as the house has been there. And with that, he's trying to make it conforming with this request. And along with that, requires the development standards variances. which requires one off-street parking. And as Mr. Andreoli says, there haven't been any driveways or parking pads or garage ever located on the property. And then the buffer yard was applied to in error, so that variance is no longer needed. And the staff is in favor of both requests for the use variance and the development standards, and happy to answer any questions.
Questions for staff?
Yes, so the off-street parking variance is still needed. The buffer
Yes,
yard is
yes,
not?
correct.
Okay. Thank you.
So from a legal standpoint, do we need to motion for a withdrawal?
I think the petitioner said that he has withdrawn that variance. Is that right?
Second development standard variance, we're requesting leave of the board to go ahead and withdraw that as it's no longer necessary.
So we need only a motion then on the one petition.
Well,
So I would,
wait a minute, was the off-street parking part of the 2021? What am I looking at here?
It's part of 66.
Yeah, the part of the 2021 66 DSV.
Okay. I got it. Never mind. Okay. So are we going to do just one motion for this, and then we'll do the second one?
yeah,
Got it.
so I would move the docket number 2021-65-UV use variance, supporting the location of an existing use of a single-family residential dwelling at 35 East Poplar Street be approved based on the findings of fact in the staff report. And that if at any point in time, the property is rezoned to a future classification that would expressly support a single-family residence, that the use variance be revoked.
Second.
Thank you for the motion and the second. Any other discussion? We just do a board vote. Those in favor of the motion for 2021-65-UV, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Best of luck to you, Mr. Mullins.
And then we have the development standards variance. Yeah. So I would move the docket. Huh?
I was going to ask if you would like to do that as well.
I will
Very
do
good.
that. Yep.
Okay,
I move the docket number 2021-66-DSV development standards variance to reduce the off-street parking to 0 for an existing single-family dwelling in the Urban Village Business District, VBD. Be approved as filed based on the findings of fact and substantial compliance with the submitted site plan and concepts.
thank you. Is there a second?
Second. All right.
Second for Mr. Jones. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you. Next item is docket number 2021-67-DSV. R. Rose, 1395 East 550 South.
I'm at 1395 550 South, and I was asking for of the variance, the barn. I have a barn out on my lot now, and it's like 38 by 39, and I was wanting to put a 40 by 63 up. It's going to be a lot shorter, but I mean, I was just wanting it for the space to store stuff. It's going to have a gravel base in it, so there's nothing. I'm just I got a side by side, a dirt bike, and I have a wood boiler that heats my house, and I wanted to put some wood in there as well, just to keep it out of the yard and the weather.
In the existing barn you have,
The existing barn, it's about ready to fall down. I was going to tear it down.
so
'cause
it
it's-
will be demolished and
Yes,
removed?
yes.
Okay, all right. Do we have questions for the petitioner? Hearing no questions, does anyone here in the audience wish to speak for or against the petition? Seeing none, do we have anyone online who would like to speak? No one online. All right. We have a staff report.
Yes, so as what Mr. Rose was describing, he's wanting to tear down an existing barn, and from what I've been described, it's not in great condition. So he's wanting to remove that barn and build a slightly larger barn, which would in fact make the accessory structures over what is required of the primary. It's about by 1,400 square feet. So that is the first request, is to have the accessory structures more than the primary. And then the second request is to memorialize the existing lot, which is under the 2 acres. And it's currently configured at 1.06 acres, which I think it's been established at least since the 1990s, probably, I think maybe probably prior to that. Staff is in favor of both of those variance requests, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff? Nope. Hearing none, is there a motion?
Well, I'd like to just make one question. So, Mr. Rose, you are in agreement with the request to establish the 1.06 acre lot?
Yes.
Okay. Need to get that okay. I'm gonna make a move. I'll make a motion. I move the docket 2021-67-DSV development standards variance in order for the accessory square footage to exceed the primary by 1,026 square feet within the rural agricultural zoning district AG for the property located at 1395 East County Road 550 South, Lebanon, Indiana 46052. Be approved as filed based on the findings of the fact and the substantial compliance with the submitted site plans and concepts.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by motion by Mr. Lake. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And Mr. Jones, would
The
you
second
like to
one?
continue
Sure.
with the second part?
I move the docket number 2021-67 DSV development standards variance in order to allow for the establishment of a 1.6 acre lot. I'm sorry, 1.06 acre lot, which is a result in the deviation from the required minimum 2 acre lot size within the rural agricultural zoning district AG for the property located at 1395 East County Road 550 South, Lebanon, Indiana 46052. Be approved as filed based on the findings of fact as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Ms. Postlewaite. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. What, Mr. Rose? Next item is docket 2022-01-DSV, D Dam. And Mr. Rotman, you will be representing them, is that correct?
Yes.
All right, can you tell us what you have proposed here?
My name is Todd Rotman, address 320 West Hawthorne Street. With me tonight are David and Robin Dam. They are the homeowners. They've lived in their house about 25 years. They've done a lot of work to the house, and it has been recognized as being a contributing carpenter style home. As we all know, over the last several years with COVID, people's needs change. There's a lot more time being spent at home. There's a lot more work from home happening, and there's a lot more time being spent outside. The one thing that has not received any attention on their property over time is the garage. It is in poor shape. It's time to be replaced. In doing so, they'd like to accomplish a couple of goals. One would be to gain some more storage space. It would still be a 1-car garage, but would allow space for things for yard work, as well as like jet skis or other outdoor activity, recreational items. And then the second purpose would be to give them some office space that's much needed. Obviously, people spend a lot more time at home. You need kind of your own individual space, or you need additional space. And so we thought the garage would be a good opportunity to gain some office space for them without affecting all the work they've done to their existing home so far. So as a result of doing that, we need some variances. Most of these are existing variances that as we put a new structure back in the same place, we have a need for those variances. The existing house is only about 4 inches from the north property line. So no matter what we did, we would be in violation of minimum side yard setbacks. And so one of the requests is for minimum side yard setback, and that is to memorialize the existing house. Our new building does meet all required setbacks, 5 feet from the property line on the side, as well as from the rear for a detached structure. But with that garage being 5 feet off the property line and the existing house at 4 inches off the property line, we need an aggregate side yard setback. It's worth noting that that 5 feet is actually further from the property line than the current garage. The current garage is in violation of current setbacks, but it was built at a time probably predating the current zoning ordinance. Another variance that we need is for lot coverage. The house with the deck and the garage currently sit at 38%. We are making the garage a little bit bigger, as I mentioned, for additional storage, as well as to provide an ample office space. So that puts us up to 39.6%. Needs to be noted that a decent portion of that overage is an actual wood deck that's on the back of the home. If the staff and commission were opposed to increase of lot coverage, that deck could be removed. However, the deck is fully permeable. I don't think it would make an effective benefit, and it would be a bit of a hardship to the owner to take down that existing deck. But just wanted to let you know that that was a possibility if lot coverage did become an issue. The last item that I wanted to talk about was the 22-foot height. We are exceeding that by about 1 foot 2 inches. The reason is building code requires a certain amount of headroom at a stair and a landing at a stair. So we have to have a 7-foot minimum headroom, not only at the top of the stair, but for a space 3 feet beyond that stair. And we want our roof pitches to match the existing house, so it looks appropriate. And so that comes at a little bit steeper pitch. And so if we take the point at the top of the stairs at the edge of the landing, it's at 3 feet, get our 7-foot height, and then pitch the roof up from that, what we end up with is a roof that ends up being over that 22-foot height. We accomplish that with the cross gable. So it's not the gable facing the street. That stays within the 22-foot requirement. It's the cross gable that gives us the headroom at the stair that exceeds that value. So only way to solve that would be to change the roof pitch, which would not match the existing house. That's an option, but we don't feel like that's a better option. Therefore, we're asking for the variance. And that's it. Thank you.
Any questions for the petitioner's representative? I will ask one. Have you seen the staff report and
Yes.
the procedural note?
Yes, about the two properties being close to each other?
Yes. Mhm.
Yes. Yes, the building code accommodates that. There is an exception for walls of dwellings and accessory buildings that are on the same property, don't actually need to be fire rated, so we're okay with that.
Is there anyone here who would like to speak for or against this petition? Yes.
Yes. Hello, my name is Bridget Courty, and I live right directly behind David and Robin. It's my opinion, I believe that we should support people in our community who are petitioning for variances that improve these historic structures and bring them into a more modern era with reasonable modern amenities. I think ultimately that just contributes to the longevity of the structures. And I think the design of David and Robin's current garage proposal absolutely accomplishes that. So I would just like to reiterate my support for their petitions, all of them, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. For anyone else? Anyone online? No. Right. We have one.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hello, is this Ms. Overbeck?
Yep. My name is Chelsea Overbeck and I live at 245 North Main Street. I would just like to reiterate my personal support for this project. And as a member of the Zionsville Historic Preservation Committee, like has already been said, we feel like this is really appropriate and supportive to the existing historic home. It's not going above and beyond what anyone in the village should have the right to have, a single car garage. And I think that Mr. Ottman has done a really good job to make sure that the plans are really appropriate with their existing historic structure in both size and scale and architecture style. Just want to say we're supportive.
Thank you, Ms. Overbeck.
Thank you.
No others, Joe? Okay, right.
I would just like to say that I also am appreciative. It appears from the letters that were submitted that you've taken a great deal of time and energy to talk with your neighbors about the project, and I'm very appreciative of that effort. I think that's important.
Full support and is excited to see something that will look very nice compared to what we have now.
Yes, thank you. We have staff report, please.
Yes, I think Mr. Rotman did a good job summarizing the request. As he stated, some of these are to memorialize existing legal nonconformities. With the new structure proposed, it's needing a lot coverage variance. I think it's about 39.6% when the requires 35%. The height, which was discussed, the minimum for an accessory structure is 22 feet. And then the distance between structures is 10 feet, and I think they are under that as well. And then the memorialization of the existing residence is 4 inches. And then with that, the aggregate cannot be met with the 15 feet with the 5-foot detached garage and then the 4-inch to the north setback. Staff is in favor of all the requests, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff?
Would you allow me to clarify something you said for the record? You, I think, accidentally said 22-foot minimum on accessory structures, and it should be 22-foot maximum.
Yes, you're correct.
Just so that's
Innocent mistake.
just so that's in the record
Yes.
like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. Any other questions? Hearing none, is there a motion?
Sure. I move that docket number 2022-01-DSV Development Standards Variance to provide for an increase of lot coverage up to 39.6%. The construction of a detached garage for the property located at 155 North Main Street in the Urban Residential Village Zoning District R-V be approved as filed based upon the findings of fact and substantial compliance with the submitted site plans and concepts.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Patel. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Would you like to continue,
I
Mr. Lake?
will, yes, I will. I move the docket number 2022-01-DSV Development Standards Variance to provide for a deviation from the aggregate side yard setback to 5 feet 4 inches for the construction of a detached garage for the property located at 155 North Main Street in the Urban Residential Village Zoning District R-V be approved as filed based upon the findings of fact and substantial compliance with submitted site plans and concepts.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Patel. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you.
I move the docket number 2022-01-DSV Development Standards Variance to provide for a deviation from the 10-foot distance between two buildings to 1 foot 1 inch for the construction of a detached garage for the property located at 155 North Main Street in the Urban Residential Village Zoning District R-V be approved as filed based upon the findings of fact and substantial compliance with the submitted site plans and concepts.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second for Ms. Postlethwaite. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you.
I move the docket number 2022-01-DSV Development Standards Variance to provide for a deviation from the 22-foot maximum height of an accessory structure to 24 feet for the construction of a detached garage for the property located at 155 North Main Street in the Urban Residential Village Zoning District R-V be approved as filed based upon the findings of fact and substantial compliance with the submitted site plans and concepts.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Passes. Thank you.
I move the docket number 2022-01-DSV Development Standards Variance to provide for a deviation from the side yard setback to 4 inches to memorialize the existing legal nonconformity of the residence for the property located at 155 North Main Street in the Urban Residential Village Zoning District R-V be approved as filed based upon the findings of fact and substantial compliance with the submitted site plans and concepts.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Postlethwaite. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Good luck with the project.
Great. Thank you guys very much. Appreciate it.
Next item is docket number 2022-02-SE, C Zering, 10995 East 100 North.
Yeah, good evening. As you mentioned, I'm Chris Zaring at 10995 East 100 North. Here tonight requesting a special exception to build a single-family dwelling on our 3-acre lot in the rural ag district of Zionsville. I was born and raised here in Zionsville, and this particular parcel is about less than a mile away from the family farm that I grew up on. So I'm very familiar with its proximity to, excuse me, Indy Executive Airport and the air traffic in and out of there, as well as familiar with most of the farmers in the area and their day-to-day activities, every season. So.
Okay. And the reason you are here is to request a variance.
Special exception.
Special exception.
Yeah, to build it.
Okay. All right. We have any questions for the petitioner? Hearing none, is there anyone here tonight to speak for or against this petition? Mr. Russ, do we have anyone online? We do not. Do we have the staff report, please?
Yes, Mr. Zaring is requesting a special exception to permit a single-family home in the ag district. I'll also mention that subject to the right to farm, as well as this being in tier 3 of the newly adopted airport study, which doesn't have any restrictions on development. With that said, staff is in favor of the request, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? No. Is there a motion to be made for this petition?
Sure. I move the docket 2022-03-SE, a special exception petition for the property located at 10995 East County Road 100 North, Zionsville, in the rural agricultural zoning district, be approved based on the staff report and proposed findings as presented. If approved, it shall be required that the petitioner execute the right to farm acknowledgement documentation.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Raquel. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And I think that the petitioner did acknowledge the right farm
Yeah,
and the nearness to an airport. So, all right, good luck with your project.
thank you.
Next is docket 2022-03-UV, D Marlowe at 8280 South, 8280 East 200 South in Zionsville.
Good evening, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the board. My name is David Marlowe. I actually live at 7010 East 200 South in Whitestown, which is directly west of the property that's on the docket. We're here requesting a use variance for a building that is on my sister-in-law's property. It happens to be I believe it's a 40 by 60 pole barn. I actually run and own a small family-oriented, ran landscape business, and but we'd like the use variance to continue to utilize this property. We don't store any material outside on the property, so it's not like we have bulk mulch bins or stone or pallets of any sort or anything like that. We have some trailers in the lot, in the barn lot, but most of our equipment, be it bobcats and whatnot, in the evening time is tucked away nice and sound inside the building, which, to protect the machine as well as keep it out of public eye.
So your request is a use variance in order to continue.
Yes, sir.
To run your operations from that location?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And reading through the staff report, I guess that there has been someone who has complained about this. Are you knowledgeable of complaints about your operation there?
I've had many discussions with some of the surrounding homeowners there. I know our direct neighbor. It's a very weird setup. How we're out in ag country. Our neighbor owns a house that is and keep in mind the pole barn was built way before this house was ever constructed. For whatever reason, the house is angled towards this pole barn and sits in his front yard. So I've heard, and I actually had a brief discussion with him, as well as my sister-in-law has talked with him too. I think he's worried about property value. And I think there's a lot of misinformation out there to some of the other neighbors, because I heard and even spoke with one of the other neighbors just down the road that they thought we were coming for a rezone. They were fearful that if we rezoned it commercial, that a gas station or something like that was allowed in on the property. And that, again, misinformation. We're just going for a use variance, that's tied to my name. And I've already made the promise that at no point in time will there be any material storage outside of this particular barn. I also, we're definitely respectful to our neighbors, but we have to be extra respectful to my sister-in-law, which lives on the same property that this particular pole barn is on.
Any questions for the petitioner?
I do have a question. If you were granted this use variance, would there be guarantees? I mean, currently there are 4 to 10 cars, based on what I read in the petition, that are parked there. Would there be stipulations that there would be no more than, would you limit the number of cars that would be parked there and the amount of traffic and that would be generated by that use variance?
So without a doubt, we're a very small company. I have no desire to grow into a large company. A lot of our guys ride together in the service industry, construction or whatnot. You'll have 3 or 4 guys showing up riding in one car. So I don't necessarily, I can guarantee that we won't outgrow the particular spot that these vehicles are parked on. And it's mainly during the daytime, or what I would call business hours. in the evening time, there might be a truck setting outside and a few trailers. But for the most part, we keep our equipment, inside the barn. So there's not really space on this particular property, nor would I look to expand to gain more space to put more vehicles. So, I mean, I guess if I had to guarantee it, I don't know how I would structure that guarantee. Because just like today, we were down there doing some upgrades to my sister-in-law's property, and we had like three of our friends, two of them being the neighbors, just so happened to stop in. So, I mean, our barn lot is at that point in time covered with vehicles just because of people stopping in, shooting the breeze, whatever the case may be.
But I would submit that having somebody come by as a guest is substantially different than having cars parked there for employees who are parking and then going and doing their work and coming back at the end of the day. I think those are different things, aren't they?
Yes, without a doubt. Again, if you would like to bring up some sort of, deal to where I don't know what the number would be. Again, we're a small family driven company. We run 3 crews. So I have no desire to get any bigger. I don't want to be the big guy. I like being the little guy that's kind of we found our niche in design build. And, I've got a good thing going. I don't want to rock the boat and try to outgrow my own ability.
Any other questions?
I think I would also think that it's worth noting that at any given time, again, we're out on a county road, gravel road to be exact. At any given time, most of the properties and the residents down that road, I won't say most of them, but quite a few of them actually have more vehicles parked at their house than we do at any given time, be it whether our employees are in or our employees are out. Our direct neighbor has just as many cars as we do when our employees are in. So when our employees are gone, and again, we don't run a 24-hour operation. So they're not there, all times of the night. There's plenty of people, and I get it. We're rural out there. You want to buy a vehicle and let it sit and fix it up, whatever the case may be. That's none of my business. But I do think it's worth noting that a lot of the residents that live out there actually have more vehicles at their property. I'm assuming that they're theirs than we actually do when our employees are, in and on the clock.
Any other questions?
I've got a quick question. So the parcel land we're talking about is the 8280 piece. And then, am I correct? Do you actually reside at 8350? Is that what I heard?
Me or her?
Either.
I reside at 8280.
Okay.
And that's where the pole barn is as well.
All right. So 8280, or I'm sorry, the 8350 property has nothing to do with it.
Correct.
Okay. The second question I have is, so the pole barn that gets the activity is the one on the northwest corner of the property.
Yes.
The one on the, what we call the southeast is, what's the use of that pole barn?
That's not mine.
There's multiple pole barns out there. Again, this is, we're out in ag country there. So there is another building on the property. I think it was an old horse stables or whatnot, but then there's another just ginormous building that sits next to that, which is the direct neighbors. Which has nothing to do with us.
And the property out there has been zoned R2 for how long? Anybody know? Okay, nobody knows. And then the final piece, if one of the exhibits, exhibit 2, the aerial location map, isn't really particularly accurate. If I'm looking at the photos you supplied, somewhere since the aerial was taken, what you've done is expanded the parking lot to the north from that northwest pole barn. Is that correct?
We've squared it off. We didn't really do, I mean, there's a lot that, most of that gravel had grass grown over it just because there was a gentleman that lived there and he used pretty much one
It
path in
appears
and
you
out.
squared it off sufficiently to store 8 additional vehicles that abut your neighbor's property.
Sure.
Okay.
Which my neighbors are also welcome to use when they have gatherings.
And have since used it for one of their gatherings.
Any other questions? Thank you. Is there anyone here who would like to speak for or against this petition? If you'd come up, state your name and your address, please.
My name is Ron Bell, and I live at 1736 South 25 East, about a half a mile or quarter of a mile north of this building. And I have some big concerns about this, primarily 2 concerns. I've not been talked to by the family, Mr. and Mrs. Marlowe. We built our home in 1986. Our home sits back off of 825 East, about 600 feet, like about 10 of the other, a total of about 12 homes that are on 825. They all have, when we bought our property, there was a 5-acre minimum that we had to buy. And many of us have at least that, if not more. And so that's important to us. All of our homes, or 10 of the 12 homes, have a drive of about 400 to 600 feet long away from 825. And I'm leading up to my first concern is, and I have a picture here, this building is, and I can break it up there closer to you, but the building is probably not more than 100 feet off of 825. And then these cars are all parked there along 825. So when you turn off of County Road 200 to go north onto 825, you see all those cars there. And as Mr. Marlowe indicated, for the last month or 2, there's been 2 trailers parked there, as well as at least 1 truck. At one time, there's 3 or 4 trucks parked there in the drive. Now he's moved that. There's usually only 1 truck there, except during the day, and then there's others. Most of the time, there's a half a dozen cars that are parked along that north edge of his workers. So my thought was, and my concern is, that when you turn that corner, you see those cars there parked, which is quite different than the rest of 825, where the other homes are very nice homes, as you can imagine, that have the 400 to 600 foot lane. My second concern is what could possibly be there in the future. And I know Mr. Marlowe has indicated that he doesn't have plans to put anything there. However, for a month or 2, he had 2 snow blades parked on the north side of that building in the grass. Now he's moved those now, which I think is a good sign. But you go down, they mentioned that they live about 1.5 miles west on 200 South. And I've got a picture here of what his place looks like. Mrs. Marlowe's father built a nice home there, but then they have a bunch of pallets, landscaping equipment, 4 or 5 trucks parked over there. I'm afraid that that's probably what could happen with this place, even though there's not enough room. So that's all I have to say. Thank you for listening to me. If you want these pictures, I can.
Thank you, Mr. Bill. And I noted your objections as the parked vehicles at the garage and other equipment, which is now gone, the snow blades. Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Ken Miller. I live at 1602 South, 825 East, about 1/3 of a mile from the building that's been discussed. I'm a resident of Zionsville now for about 12 years. We moved here after looking at probably 50 properties in Indianapolis. And we decided on Zionsville because of the quality of the rural and the village environment. And what we would say, we'll call a residential standard that is set in this community. And I think there are many people that have come to Zionsville exactly for that reason, the residential quality and the standards that exist. I don't really want to spend time going over the deviations from the home occupation standard. You probably have that report from your staff, and there are numerous violations or deviations from what's expected for the kind of thing that's going on. Now, I don't think the building itself has ever really been an issue. I think that I certainly had no issue with that building being used for maintenance. What caused me concern is when the parking lot was expanded by at least 100%. Then shortly after the parking lot was expanded, then all of a sudden there was a half a dozen cars there every day, followed by 2 or 3 trucks, trailers, a bobcat occasionally, and a couple of snow blades. And when you come around the corner, it's clear that that property now is a commercial operation because of all the signs on the machine, on the equipment, the trucks specifically. I really have no issue with the business that you're operating. I do have an issue with the fact that what used to be down the street at a very ample parking area is now down on this very small pad. And I suspect it's a matter of convenience, but I don't think it really adds to the quality of Zionsville, particularly the residential expectations. And I think to approve this variance would be a bad precedent to start. And it also would, potentially in the future lead to other issues of this nature. So I don't think this variance should be granted.
Okay, Mr. Miller.
Hello, my name is Craig Blattner. I live at 1770 South on 825. I live actually closer to the property that we're talking about than Mr. Ron and the other neighbors. I agree with everything they're saying. They pretty much have said it pretty closely. I really didn't have a lot to say until I heard a couple of things they did that the petitioners are talking about. There are a lot of cars and a lot of trucks there. The area is not 100 feet off of the road. It's probably closer to 40 feet. When they first put that, when the Kings first put the building up there, it was basically just an area where you pulled in your vehicle before you open the garage door, and then you pull your vehicles in or whatever you had inside, or you had trailer and things. Nice sized building. I don't remember him ever leaving great amounts of anything out in front of it. He's very particular about everything he had in there. Mr. King left. We had noticed when he never knew he left, he sold the place and came down the road, and there were a bunch of trucks sitting there redoing the yard and putting the new space in front for the parking lot. I was never notified that this was moving there. I knew where they came from because they were down the road. I knew the size of the property they had used before, and they piled a lot of big vehicles in there. They expanded it. And I went, well, it seems like it's a little bit close. Now, I guess I probably wouldn't have said anything about that had they not made mention that the neighbors all have as many cars as they have. I have an RV. I have a small boat. I have a trailer. We have in the family, I have a son living with me. We have 3 cars. And yes, they're all parked on our property. We have 10 acres. My house is in the middle of the 10 acres on an 800-foot drive. In fact, on that 10 acres, because I have over 5 acres, I'm having to pay I have to double my taxes on my property because I have what they call excessive, you probably already know about this, excessive land use, because I have 5 acres more than I'm supposed to have, except when I bought the property at the time, I had to buy it 10 acres because that's what they sold me. I built my house. I've been there for over 35 years. My concern is the fact that my Cars are 800 feet off the road. We have trees on the other side of us. We have a small area frontage. So I'd have to disagree with them on that point. That's not a good point to bring up. The car thing is probably the fact that they have a lot of vehicle there is probably the one concern I have. Along with the other concern is we moved out there because it was rural and it was farmland. That's the way I wanted to live 35 years ago, build it up there. It's been pretty much that. If you start putting a business there, and he only wants the variance now, but that does lead into the point where that you could take and turn it into business property if you're there for a period, I'm sure. There's 60 acres next to me that's open, that has been talked about development. They've had trouble developing it because of water and sewer, a lot of other factors. What happens with that 60 acres if we have a business there? Does that make it easier for another business to come in and say, oh, we want another corner. Oh, we want another frontage. We want to put this. What am I going to have alongside of my property? And where's the value of my property going to go? That's what I have to say. I'm not really happy with this procedure. If they were all enclosed, be one thing, but then they have to build that building closer to the house. Are they willing to take and ruin their yard up to the house to put all their vehicles there just to get them off of that drive? That'd be a good question to ask. That's pretty much all I have to say. I thank you for my time.
Thank you. Anyone else here that would like to speak? Mr. Russ, do we have anyone online? Okay, are they, can you offer the opportunity to raise their hand? And they have? Are they unable or just not, they're not wanting to? Okay. All right. Could we have the staff report, please?
Yes. So as Mr. Marlowe is describing his business in the narrative provided, he's requesting what we best can align with a landscape contractor. That's the closest use we came to, which thus requires a use variance to allow in this R2 zoning. Traditionally, staff is in favor of low intensity home occupations, which I think I provided that in your staff report that goes through all the home occupation standards. Based on the narrative that the petitioner provided and what staff has seen, it doesn't meet many of those criteria. This is why the use variance is necessary. From staff's perspective, it exceeds the allowable traditional type commercial operation in that general area, just with the appearance of the amount of employees on the site with the vehicles, the trailers, and equipment. I know there are probably some legal non-conforming businesses possibly in the area that have been in existence that were permitted prior to the zoning ordinance. And that's what I can speak on that. With all that said, staff is not in favor of the use variance, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
So I have a
Questions for staff?
Yeah, I have a question, and I don't know who wants to field this, Wayne or otherwise, but if their driveway / parking area was expanded at some point in time, would Zionsville require that to be approved prior to that expansion?
I'm happy to jump in. I mean, it's something that's rural. And even if it was urban, there's only one district, I think, that requires has any sort of regulatory authority over driveways, and that's the residential village.
Okay,
So
all right, thank you.
Any other questions for staff?
Would staff be able to figure out how long has this land up here been zoned R2?
As far as, I don't know when the Boone County ordinance came into
Certainly
effect.
when it came into the town of Zionsville's jurisdiction in 2010, it was R2.
One of the items I always find interesting is reviewing these kind of projects is it's interesting the placement of this pole barn. Because for the owner of 8280 East County Road 200 South, if I was the owner of it, it's a perfectly fine placement for the owner of the property. It is on the far northwest corner, kind of out back, probably out of their line of sight. What's interesting is you go back through the Google Maps and you see a few years ago, there was a sufficient drive to service that pole barn. But as we go through the pictures we were provided this evening, as well as even the pictures the petitioner provided, you can see there was a certain period of time where they expanded it, the parking, not particularly controlled manner. Look at the pictures, and now they've expanded it and cleaned it up more. But all that is done to the benefit of the existing residents at 8280 East County Road 200 South. It's all done out of their line of sight, but directly in the line of sight of the adjoining property owners. And, this is one of the many reasons we do not, and have had a history of turning down commercial uses in residentially zoned area. It was, the basketball court, the basketball business. We had another farm up on 32 where as a farmer, he could have had all the farm equipment he wanted out there, but at a certain point in time, he had 6 subtenants of the property or something like that, different businesses. And we turned that one down as well. It's just, as much as everybody has good intent and it's a nice family business and landscaping and et cetera, once you start allowing commercial businesses into an area, this is the kind of problems we get.
And this is neither here nor there, but as you mentioned, the line of sight, the house to the north of them, south of them, is unfortunately sited. That was a horrible location to put that house, facing directly towards that mark. So, not that that excuses anything.
No.
It's just, that was a really, really bad place to put that house.
Any other comments? I'll offer a couple questions. The petitioner, I assume you've seen what the procedural considerations for use variance petition are. There are 5 of them. I assume you've seen those. In particular, my question is C and D, the need for the variance arises from some condition peculiar to the property involved, and strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship in the use of the property. I haven't heard anything that addressed that. And the next one is the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship in the use of the property. So these are procedural considerations which we must make in order to approve. And if we don't feel that they have been achieved, our obligation is to deny this.
So I don't think we're, again, I know I might have offended some folks when I said that, that some of the neighboring properties have just as many vehicles as we do. If you was to put a dot where we are and do just a 1 mile radius, like you brought up, I know there's a bunch of businesses out there. I mean, essentially a horse farm in and of itself is a business when you let people show up and pay to have lessons. And I mean, just down the road on 825, there's people using their private homes to give swimming lessons and things of that nature. I just feel that I'm not trying to bring anybody's property value. I never set out to do this. My sister-in-law and my wife were literally raised 2 houses or 3 houses to the north of this is where they were born and raised. I was born and raised in Whitestown myself. So I'm very, I want to be very respectful, which is why, I make sure our trash outside was, we never have trash blowing around. All of our vehicles and trailers and whatnot are in nice straight lines, lined up. We don't, again, we're a design build firm, so we don't mow or fertilize or anything like that. So we store zero material of hazard. We're trying to fix the place up and clean the place up and do some things for my sister-in-law, along the way. So, the gentleman here that came up and was talking about the RVs and whatnot in his yard, what he failed to mention was the 50-foot round pile of brush and stuff that's sitting in his front yard, maybe 100 feet from the road. So his cars are back off the road. And the neighbors that I have talked to, when I have talked to them, I said, well, what about our neighbor over here that has the 5 cars? Well, we don't notice that. I don't know what, unfortunately the barn sits too close to the road. Elsewise, I know a good landscaper that could hide it. If I could hide it, I would, I think if I knew that would solve my issue, without a doubt, I would hide it. I just feel that it sits a little bit too close to the road to be able to, legitimately do something that blends in. I don't want people to drive by and go, man, they forced that in, or they really shoehorned that, those trees in or something. So we are, I don't want to bring any hardship to anybody. I'm not looking to bring property values down. They're right that I do own the property down the road, and someday, hopefully the market will kind of get back in correction and the price of a 2x4 won't cost me $100. I'll then build a pole barn next to my property, God willing, and with, I'm sure, your permission on some of the, permits that I'm going to need. But, until then, we're kind of fixing this place up as well as utilizing it for storage and maintenance. Again, I didn't try to make anybody mad in doing this. It was totally unplanned. I was kind of taken back when I found out who all was opposed to this past week. I drove down 825 and I looked around at some of the properties and some of the property owners that are opposed to this, and I was just taken back by the fact that, most of these people have pole barns and they have stuff sitting all the way around their pole barns, and they want to talk like they're sitting back off the road. But when the leaves are gone in the fall and in the winter, everything that was pushed off into the weeds, which our direct neighbor has, I've got pictures that I'd love to share, and I guess I should have shared had I known it was going to go this direction, of almost everybody down this road is in violation of something. And if they're not in violation of something, then I guess I shouldn't be either. Again, be it the amount of vehicles, I would say at least 70% of the people on this road have just as many vehicles as we do. Again, they might have 10 acres and be able to fit those a little more comfortably on their property. We unfortunately sit really close to the road.
I think the one difference is that the board member to my right has got more cars than anybody you've mentioned so
Sure.
far, but he doesn't have a business at his home.
Sure.
And that, I think, is the difference, that the business actually means that you've got people coming and going.
For sure.
And as far as I know, we can only drive one vehicle at a time. So the rest of them are just sitting.
And for the most part, the vehicles that we don't utilize, I keep on my property. We have some, what I call projects. And if you've got that many vehicles, you know what I mean by projects. I have every intention of putting them back together. Some of them have a motor that's shot. I keep those at my property down the road. So all the vehicles that are sitting on this property are plated, insured, registered. And if they don't get driven on a daily basis, at any point in time, you can turn the key and drive them. We don't have vehicles down there that we're storing on blocks, or we'll get to that next week. I know there was something brought up about my snow plows and push boxes sitting outside for a month. They actually sat outside for like 2 or 3 days while we brought them in to fix them. As soon as they got fixed, they were removed off of property. It was just after the snowstorm, we set them, tried to hide them around the corner of the barn, but I guess I didn't do a good enough job of hiding them, with no intentions of just walking away and leaving them. I mow this property, so I'm not trying to make obstacles for myself to weed eat around or anything like that. So and again, my sister-in-law lives on the property, so without a doubt, I by default, married to her sister, have to be over respectful as to how we treat the property.
How long have you had the business there?
We're very infant. I think 4 years, 5 years, something like that. So, oh, the business at this property. Yeah, end of this past year. The gentleman that sold the property to Haley was utilizing the property for some or utilizing the barn for storage and whatnot until he got to where he could store some of his things, because he moved from a pretty good sized property to an apartment. So, once he got his things moved out of there, we kind of started using it to maintain our trucks, do oil changes and whatnot, when it comes up.
Any further questions for the petitioner? Thank you. Discussion among the group.
Mr. Mundy, I do want to offer to you that you do have an online viewer that it was some technical challenges and unable to be promoted, if you will. So we do want to offer information to the board. 1933 South 825 East. It's the Witskin family lives actually just to the north there. Has provided some comment. We'll get that printed and archived into the record, but it is just representing concerns related to the petition. Just want to provide that for you, that party is just speaking and looking, trying to participate. Certainly to Mr. Jones's request, we don't have information at the ready as to at what point in time this parcel was first zoned R2. I can tell you, just looking at historical aerial photos, the driveway that you're mentioning has been there, at least since the 90s for the barn.
And maybe another thing worth mentioning, and I apologize if I interrupted, but we have 3, I believe, homeowners that live on 825 there. That's kind of written some letters. I know a few of them are kind of sweet and to the point. But Natalie Wentworth, which is the very last house on the east side of 825, wrote us a very nice letter in support.
We do have copies of those.
Yes.
Mr. DeLong, can you give us some indication as to what the concerns are from the viewer that is trying to convey some information to us?
I would say I'm being provided screenshots from our IT staff in the back, but certainly it is questioning the ride sharing that's been mentioned, noises. There's interjecting in with the quiet enjoyment of the normally associated with residential area. There might be other technical topics that could be sent to me, but that's just providing a little bit of a snapshot of what I have literally.
Discussion among the group, thoughts?
I just think, as Larry noted, the challenge is the home occupation aspect of this on its commercial nature. We've got the 3 bullet points here that the owner of the home occupation has to live in the house. It needs to be a sole entrepreneur that does not employ other people, and no more than 2 off-street parking spots. And so we well exceed or don't even, and some of those don't even, aren't met. So.
I think ultimately, even if we would decide to grant this, there's no guarantee that the business doesn't grow as much as he doesn't foresee that. I mean, I just can't imagine without constraints. I agree.
And I'd be willing to hear some constraints. If you would like to discuss that, I'd be more than willing to discuss it. I mean, I don't know that what we can come to terms on or agreements on. Again, that was another issue of mine, is where is the line drawn? What classifies this as starting? I mean, if I was to say, all right, gentlemen, let's meet out at the Lowe's and park our cars there. You all jump in my truck. We'll run and grab some shovels and whatnot out of the barn. I ask myself, is that okay? And again, if this goes forward without a favorable recommendation, I need somebody to tell me what we can and can't do with this property, because what I don't want to do is get my sister-in-law in trouble or receive fines myself. So, I mean, if it goes forward with without a favorable recommendation, I need somebody to clarify what it is exactly we can do with this property. Are we allowed to? Are we even allowed to step foot on the property? I looked and I tried to find guidelines. What justifies a business as being a business, and other than employees coming in the door, I couldn't really find anything else. Again, we try to stay within the NOIT ordinance of town. We don't run a 24-hour operation. So if you could direct me to where I might be able to find some of these notes as to what we are allowed to do and what we aren't allowed to do.
Well, I think the conclusion that the board needs to make is whether or not the request for a variance here is permissible based on these procedural considerations and the things we've heard from neighbors, as well as your input in terms of the business you're running. What the town doesn't allow is to have a business there. It is not zoned for a business, and your business doesn't meet the criteria of a home-based business. You run the business, but you don't even live there. That's one of the requirements. So I don't know that we could tell you everything you can and can do there. I think what we can do is determine whether or not we would grant a variance and allow it, or deny the request, which says you can't have the business you have there now. And Wayne and our legal counsel, I'm not sure if you can provide any more input in terms of what would be permissible. At this point, we don't have a motion, so it's still being discussed. I think that we probably have heard all we need to hear.
No, I was going to ask, is your business operating out of Whitestown?
Yes. Yes.
It's not operating out of this garage.
So our actual business address is my house. That's where my office is. We have a home office there. So like the business address is my property, half mile or so to the west of this. So no, we're not, we have no signs. We don't allow customers to come. We don't have any customers stopping by or anything like that. Most of the time, essentially our office is the job site. When I meet with our customers, we usually go out and meet on their property to go over things. So,
but your business operates out of Whitestown.
Yes.
At your current address. Okay, thank you.
Is there a motion that could be put up for board discussion and vote?
I move the docket number 2022-03-UV use variance supporting the use, supporting the,
Listen to word use.
yeah, okay,
It's got too many.
got it. Let me start again. I move the docket number 2022-03-UV use variance supporting the use of the property by a landscape contractor at 8280 East County Road 200 South, Zionsville, be denied as presented and described.
Second.
Motion by Board Member Jones and seconded by Mrs. Postlewaite. Any further discussion?
I'm going to continue this. If you are, depending on your results of this motion here, if there are to be negative findings of fact to be written, we would then do that at a subsequent meeting.
Should that be included in the motion? Was there a finding of fact?
I think the way we've been handling any negative findings recently is you make your decision, you act on your motion, and we continue the matter just for purposes of preparing and approving, signing findings at your next meeting. So you take action on tonight, but it's technically continued just for the purpose of the findings.
Okay, all right. Well, we have a motion to deny and a second. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
The motion is denied. We will,
The motion is approved.
I'm sorry, the motion is approved to deny. We will have a finding of facts that will be reviewed and signed at the next meeting, which will be April 6th, I believe. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
The next item is docket number 2022-04-DSV T Griffin at 9765 Equestrian Way. You, Mr. Griffith?
Hello. Thank you for the time of the board. Appreciate the consideration. My name is Troy Griffith. I reside at 9765 Equestrian Way here in Zionsville, along with my wife Jen and our 8-year-old daughter Reese. We are requesting a development standards variance to add a pool, concrete pool patio, paver patio, and covered pavilion in our backyard. The project exceeds the 20% lot coverage requirements with a total coverage of 25%. The variance is needed to allow proper and adequate functionality of the pool and the patio area. And again, I thank you for your consideration.
Any questions for the petitioner? Hearing none, do we have anyone in the audience who wishes to speak for or against this petition? Anyone online, Mr. Rust? No. Okay. Do we have the staff report, please?
Yes. As the petitioner has stated, they are wishing to get a development standards variance to accommodate a pool. The current lot coverage requirement is 20% and they're requesting 25%. We looked at surrounding properties, even specifically in this subdivision. I think it's of recent as last year that have similar type requests. And there have been additional variance requests that have been approved in this area with pools and with around the same lot coverage requests. And we're in favor of those and also are in favor of this being approved. I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? Hearing none, is there a motion?
I had a quick question. So the site plan that we provided, the pool and the additional hardscaped areas, addition to the deck. That's all included in the, I'm just trying to check my numbers. So there's the addition of the 16 by 36 foot pool, and then the deck, covered pavilion, and paver patio. So that all is included in the increase up to 5160. Is that right?
Yes.
And that makes up the 25%
Yes,
lot
all
coverage.
from what I understand, the pool and all the additional pool deck and additional outdoor paver areas is included in that lot coverage.
Your questions answered?
I think so.
If there are no other questions, is there a motion on this petition?
I move that docket number 2022-06-DSV Development Standards Variance in order to provide for an increase of lot coverage up to 25% for the construction of a pool, concrete deck, covered pavilion, and paver patio for the property located at 9765 Equestrian Way in the Urban Single Family Residential District, RSF2, be approved based upon the findings of fact and substantial compliance with the submitted site plan and concepts.
Thank you, Ms. Postaway. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. McHale. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank
Good luck with your project.
Appreciate it.
A need for a motion to approve first class mail. Is that?
Oh, yeah. I should have done that at the beginning.
Sorry, I just saw all those.
No, I was sitting there. We were talking about it in the pre-meeting. We had that on our
We
notes.
might as well wait till the end.
I was so excited that Steve agreed to be the chairman that I forgot the one thing I was supposed to do.
Yeah, and I can tell you, I'm not that excited. The next item on our docket is number 2022-06-DSV, J. Gauger. And it's at 560 Beach Street, Zionsville.
Yes, good evening. Thank you for your time. My husband, David Boomer, my daughter, Annalise, and I are here seeking a variance development standards for our home located in the Village Residential District. We are seeking a variance of the 35% lot coverage standard for an in-ground swimming pool. I know in your packet of information, there's the diagram of the pool. I just wanted to take a moment to look at the considerations this evening. The grant is not injurious to public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. We are strong believers in safety. We have a 7-year-old daughter. Safety is paramount to us. We are contemplating an automatic safety pool cover, complying with the provisions of the Indiana Code and Indiana Administrative Code. That automatic pool safety cover is weight rated to 400 pounds per square foot. We also have a fully fenced backyard with a self-locking gate. The second consideration is that the use or value of adjacent property will not be affected. We don't believe any of our neighbors will be adversely affected. There's no data to suggest that a pool would be detrimental to the impact or use of our property or our neighbors or the adjacent area. I also just like to point out that the number of pools have increased nationwide during the pandemic. Generally, pools increase the value of property. They attract families to the area, which in turn keeps communities desirable to families. The final consideration is whether the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in unnecessary hardship to the use of the property. We, of course, believe it will create terrible hardship to us and our family. But all joking aside, it is a permitted use of property. A denial of the variance would prohibit that use, of course. Strongly believe that in the use and beneficial enjoyment of our property. But I think more importantly, we love this community. We love our property. We love where we're located. We want to invest in our property. We want to make it more desirable. We want to stay here. We want our daughter to stay here. But we also believe that adapting our house to modern living standards is important. We think it also encourages healthy, thriving sense of community. I don't want to ruin the surprise, but the staff recommends denial of our project. I'm not entirely sure why. I think they'll probably elaborate. One of the things was, though, that there are not any pools in proximity to our home. I pulled up an aerial view, and within, again, I don't know what the definition of proximity is, but Google aerial view shows 6 pools, in-ground pools within a 6-block radius. So I don't believe that the request is novel to the village residential area. They have apparently been allowed previously. I would really appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll have one question. First, a comment, I guess. We have had pools that have been come before this board, and is in the village. It's usually because of lot coverage. There is the option to use pervious materials as part of the deck or the surrounding portion, which aids in the percolation of water down through the ground. So, and water is often a problem in the village, and you do have, one side of your property is higher than the others. Every one of them is coming down. So is there, have you given any consideration to, you would still exceed the 35% no matter what you did, but you could get some credit for pervious materials?
Yes, we have considered that, but one other thing we've reached out to a drainage company. It is one issue we're very concerned about as well. But we've held off on actually any drainage corrections or work being done in anticipation of potentially putting in a pool, at which time our backyard will be dug up. So that would be an ideal time to add some sort of drainage assistance. Not entirely sure what all of our options are, but we do need to look at something like that. And to your specific question about other materials, as I understand it, there is some portion of the lip of a pool that has to be covered in cement. So we have tried to go as narrow as possible, and if allowed, I will absolutely go less. But I believe that I'm at the minimum.
I'm not a pool expert, but I think that's correct, that a portion of it will be a poured concrete, not permeable material.
Yeah, but I would absolutely, if allowable, consider, well, I wouldn't consider it, I'd do it.
Any questions for the petitioner?
One of the details I'm not seeing is any kind of walkway or connection between the existing patios and the pool. Are you just going to have this thing free floating in the yard?
Yes. It's not a very large distance. We tried to move the pool as close as possible to the home. We have a number of large trees that we want to protect. Our neighbor has a couple of large trees, so we're trying to move it closer to our home where we have no trees, roots that we think will be as problematic. So anyway, it should be a step in the yard or 2 steps in the yard to get to the pool.
It appears, based on Google Earth at least, that your neighbor to the east has an above-ground pool, or did at one point in time have an above-ground pool?
Yes.
And their lot coverage appears to be significantly higher than your lot coverage. Even without the pool, their lot coverage seems to be significantly higher than yours.
I'm not telling on my neighbors. I'm joking.
Trying to help you out.
Thank you, thank you. Yes. It's not a permanent structure. I do know that.
As a former pool owner, I will tell you, trees and pools don't go well together.
I know. they have a lot of advanced filtration, I'm told, or that might be a selling technique to help with leaves and
Is there anyone in the audience or online that would like to speak for or against this petition? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. I am Diane Terry, and I live at 590 Beach Street, which is the property that abuts directly with the property and would abut directly to the pool. If you see on Google Earth, our yards are actually more side yards, not backyards. So mine is that abuts next to it with the fence line. And I really have no objection to the pool itself. My main concern was, possibly damaging tree roots to damage trees, which I've spent a lot of money preserving because they're ash trees. And so I have to get them treated like every couple of years for that and get them pruned. But I've seen the site plans. They're actually, good in where they're trying to make sure not to disturb those roots. My other only concern actually is drainage. But I know that they're looking at doing some type of proper drainage to help that, because where we are, we don't have curbs. Drainage, I live right across, I'm directly across from Eagle. I have no curbs. So the street water runs from that into my yard, keeps going. The hydrostatic pressure there is bad. So we get water trying to come up through the basement floors and things like that. So I think if they put the pool in and also do additional drainage, that actually may help to improve some of that problem as well. I don't know because I'm not an expert in that, but I have personally owned 3 pools in my lifetime. So I know a little bit about that.
Your lot is higher than their lot, correct?
Yes, but I still can get puddling in my backyard because our drain, the drainage in the village is not great. We don't have street drains where we live. We have no curbs where we live, which would be nice. If that could get on the docket at somewhere, somehow. But thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone online, Mr. Rust? No. Okay. We have the staff report, please.
Yes. So as the petitioner stated, they're requesting a pool, an associated pool deck that would increase the lot coverage to 40%. Traditionally, when approving variances, staff looks at surrounding properties. If they enjoy the same uses in the area, within the immediate area, I guess that could be a subjective term. As the petitioner stated, they looked at 6 blocks. I think staff would look a little bit tighter than that. As far as I am aware, any of the petitions in the village that have included pools within the past year, staff has not supported. I will note that with pervious material, the allowed lot coverage does go up to 37% versus the 35%. So based on this, the not in the immediate area, which again, we looked probably closer, tighter than 6 blocks, that staff was not in favor of the request. I'm happy to answer any questions.
So it seems to me that pervious material, because we're not talking about an extensive pool deck or a choice between concrete and pavers in this case, based on what the petitioners mentioned, that we're only talking about the immediate collar of the pool. Is that what my understanding? So there's not a lot of flexibility of changing out concrete to pavers and improving and getting that 2%. Is that everybody's understanding of this?
I-
based on
Yeah, they could take, they would get some credit for that, but yeah, it won't amount to a large portion of the deck around the pool.
There's not a lot of concrete,
No.
poured concrete that you're using. I mean, the pool is essentially independent of a large patio or anything else, correct?
That's correct. And as I understand it, we've tried to keep the
Right.
surround to the minimum too.
Typically with any kind of pool, you need that band of concrete around
Yeah.
it to
Stability for
keep it stable,
architectural stability.
both to support the automatic pool cover and
I also had a pool once upon a time. It's now a garden.
my poison is cars. I've stayed away from pools, so.
Any other comments? Questions of staff? For the two new members, we haven't had lots of requests, at least while I've been on the board for pools. We've had a few. And it almost always, well, the only ones we've probably seen are ones which do exceed the block coverage. We have approved a number of them. There's a lot of logic and probably some illogic to that, but they don't represent anything that's above ground site barriers. So you don't notice from afar the pool as much near as you would notice a secondary building or other things which are upright. And I think we have seen ones that do exceed or at least have reached the 40% mark before.
Yeah, we've generally held, at least recently, that 40% threshold is kind of a do not exceed. There is a pool that we approved at Walnut and Fourth, which is 2 blocks away, which will be constructed. And I would say, given the fabric of this area, immediate surrounding would be a block north, 3 blocks south, probably a block west and 3 blocks east, given that that's all of a similar context and fabric and scale and era.
I wonder if it's advisable to have some stipulation made and whether this is even permissible about drainage, because it sounds to me as if drainage isn't a problem in this area, and with her lot being a low-lying, even more low-lying than her neighbors, and the water pooling in her neighbor's yard, is it possible to have a stipulation that
So
drainage were to be
somebody
added?
can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the most appropriate way to handle that would be to continue this and require that they come back with some sort of drainage solution prior to us approving it.
Is the Walnut and Fourth, the previous church that we just did?
Yes.
Where they volunteered to put in basically a kind of a French drain or
Right.
retainage to take on a little of the drainage issue. A year or two ago, we did the one that just came back that has kind of the pool in the front.
They had a swale.
The swale, we had a swale and had them actually tie in some subsurface drainage to a storm sewer that was across the front of the property. So the drainage issue has been one that we've constantly been trying to find ways to address. And if the best situations we've had is where the homeowners have, made some sort of additional, what I'm looking for, contribution or just additional
But through
effort.
an official design, not just as a blanket statement.
Correct. As a part of whatever we're approving.
Right. I think the last one we approved, the one that you mentioned there at Fourth and Walnut, is it? They actually had a company come in and design so that water that fell on their property would not leave their property.
Yeah, they were actually retaining 100% of the runoff from their impervious surface. And it was not a fancy, or as an architect, it did not appear to be an expensive solution. It just took some engineering math that is well above my skill set to do. Yeah, if you could come up and, yeah, just so that it's on the record.
We are very happy to do that if you'd like official plans. It's something we've known. I mean, we know we need to address the drainage issue. And again, we simply waited because we thought it would be a good time to do it all at once if, again, it was approved. So definitely happy to provide official plans.
So would you like,
Go ahead.
I was to say, would you like to request a continuance to sort that out and bring it back to us?
Yes, I would.
In that case, I would make a motion to continue docket number 2022-06-DSB to the April meeting, April 6th meeting.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Lake, and a second by Mrs. Postaway. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. I would note that we're not asking you to just study this. It really requires then the commitment to adhere to the study.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
that you do in fact assure your neighbors to the east of you that they won't be getting additional runoff.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next item is docket number 2022-07-SE. R. Alexi at 8183 East 50 South. Is this going to be a virtual, Mr. Rust? Okay.
And there are actually two for this. Same petitioner.
Right, yes, there are two.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Excellent.
This is Josh Findler.
Yes, correct. I'll start my video here too. Hello. Well, there we go.
Welcome, sir. If you'd to give us your name and your address and then tell us what you're requesting.
Yeah, good evening. Joshua Findler. I have offices at 735 Shelby Street, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46202. I am the petitioner representing the homeowners Ryan and Kylie Alexi, address 8183 East 50th South in Zionsville. We are requesting a couple variances tonight. Let's see, the development standard variance 2022-08-DSB. This would be for a development standard variance to provide two primary single-family dwellings on one lot in the rural agricultural district. And then the special exception to provide for a new single-family dwelling and to provide for one existing single-family dwelling and related accessories in the ag district. Basically, the homeowners want to build a in-law suite on their property. If you look at the site plan, there's an existing barn. It's a large lot. I think it's now something like 15 acres. So they have a house that's kind of further back from the street behind the pond. And then there's an existing historic barn that's closer to the street. Originally, we were going to renovate that barn and turn part of that into an apartment for their father-in-law. But because of some structural issues and just the historic nature of the barn, we're proposing to do an addition to that existing barn while also renovating the existing portion of it. The end result will be basically one cohesive structure that looks similar, but one side of it will be the historic barn and the other side of it will be a 1.5 story apartment with a footprint. Let's see, I believe, 20 by 20 feet addition to that barn and the full width of that barn. So it's 46 feet. They're not looking to rent this out or have any kind of, income from this additional dwelling on the property. It's strictly for the father-in-law to reside when he's in town. And, it won't be egregious in any way. We're going to blend it in with the existing aesthetic of the barn. There'll be some more windows and obviously like a garage door, but, nothing nothing out of the kind of the fabric of the existing barn. I think staff is in favor of our petitions, and so we agree with their findings. So I appreciate your time and your consideration.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the petitioner's representative?
Will there be an additional driveway to this from, this would it be County Road 50 South?
Yeah, there's already an existing gate there and kind of half like gravel entry. I think we'll probably do the existing driveway to the house is a crushed stone. So they would probably extend what's there and connect, the entry from 50 with the gate and then connect that to a garage.
So there will be a separate driveway for this.
Correct. Yeah, it's separated by kind of like a drainage ditch in that pond. So there's already two separate entrances to the property, one to the barn and one to the driveway to the house.
So will this then have a separate address?
Well, I assumed it would be, since it's on the same parcel, they could do, the same address, Unit B. I don't know exactly. This is the first petition I filed within the city of Zionsville. So I don't know exactly how you guys consider that. That's how we would do it in Indianapolis, would be the same address, but as a different unit number.
911 would frown upon multiple addresses on a residential piece of property. So we would, the 81, 83, there would be a request for assignment of different units or splits A and B. Has historically not been approved.
We've had this come up before where there was a guest quarters on a piece of property.
Correct.
And that was served by a single driveway. In other words, you came up the same driveway and there was a main house and then there was an outbuilding with living quarters. So this location is going to have no address or no marking. It's going to have a gate and a drive out to 50 South, but
As this isn't the first time this has come up, we can certainly consult with 911 to see how their best practice is for this type of situation. But this is not uncommon to have more than one driveway coming into a house property, more than one structure on the property to which someone may be utilizing as guest quarters.
so you are permitted to have two drives servicing one property.
If you can obtain the drive cut permit from the county highway department, yes, and I'm not aware of any particular restrictions on 50 South.
But only one of them would carry the address 8183.
The address is assigned to the primary, to the parcel.
Yeah, and like I said, there's already an existing access to the barn that's separate from the house access driveway. I mean, if there's some sort of signage needed to delineate between, the main house and the accessory, we'd obviously be open to that.
The structure, the addition to the barn would be just living quarters. It's not going to include a garage, or does it include a garage?
There would be a one-car garage facing 50th. So basically, you would see a roll-up door on the addition portion of the barn.
Well, I assume this is on well water and septic, is that right?
Correct. Yeah. So it would need a well drilled and a septic.
And a separate septic system field and so on will be put in place?
Correct.
Any other questions? Is there anyone here to speak for or against this proposal? Nothing online? Could we have the staff report, please?
Yes, the petitioner is requesting two things here. The first request, which is the development standards variance, is to have two primary dwellings on one parcel. And then the other request is a special exception to allow for the new primary residence or single family home, and also to memorialize the existing home on the property, because we're not aware that ever received a special exception. So they're requesting one for the new residents, memorializing the existing residence, and then as discussed, having the two primary structures on one parcel. And the petitioner is also agreeable to not rent it out and just having it used as for family. With that, staff is in favor of the petitions, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
How would this property then be recognized in terms of improvements? It has a house. Would it be considered to have two dwellings and a barn?
So it would have, it would have two primary structures and then the associated accessory structures. Based on the information that I had gotten from the petitioner, the accessory structures won't exceed the primary because you're actually increasing the size of the primary structures when you add them together. So that shouldn't come into place.
Any other questions for staff? Would anyone like to motion on this petition?
I move the docket number 2022-07-SE, a special exception petition in the agricultural district for the property located at 8183 East County Road 50 South, Zionsville, be approved based upon the staff report and the proposed findings as presented. If approved, just note that the petitioner will need to execute the right to farm acknowledgement documentation.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Bedell. All those in favor of docket number 2022-07-SE, special exception, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion passes, and I would emphasize what Mr. Lake concluded there at the end, and that is that the acknowledgement that there's a right to farm. There's also, the staff has pointed out, not that it's required, but the proximity to the airport, you're not within the range that requires it, but we'd like to have acknowledgement that there's an airport there and that airplanes fly in and out. And Mr. Lake, would you like to finish?
I move the docket number 2022-08-DSV development standards variance in order to provide for the allowed number of primary uses from 1 to 2, which includes a new primary dwelling at the property located at 8183 East County Road 50 South, Zionsville, in the rural agricultural zoning district, be approved as filed based upon the findings of fact and substantial compliance with the submitted parcel dimensions as related to depth and width in the site plan and concepts. I would also like it noted that we would like to restrict utilization of this second primary dwelling to non-income generated occupancies only.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. Is there a second?
Second.
And certainly before the board would want to point out, certainly it is feasible and normal to then combine both the right to farm and this zoning commitment into one document. And we're happy to help facilitate what's been articulated.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Good luck with the project.
Thank you. One question, just as far as the addresses are concerned, is that something that I will talk to the permit office about, or how do I go about figuring out the best route as far as that's concerned?
Well, by Indiana law, addresses are ultimately assigned by the Plan Commission. And so we certainly, the Plan Commission, they will work with 911 to facilitate that. Certainly, I can just speak to when you start adding characteristics that lend themselves to truly two primary structures, two septics, two wells, two addresses. I mean, it starts to defeat the entire purpose of creating a non-income producing property. Yes, it is, and certainly two dwelling properties are then themselves have a very different even lending structure in terms of how you then monetize those. So certainly all these characteristics, let alone the zoning issues, but certainly the answer to the question is the Plan Commission ultimately has a statutory authority over this. This is not the first time that the Plan Commission and the fire department will work together to facilitate this particular topic, but with full recognition of, as you add additional characteristics to properties, to make them look as if there's two permitted dwellings, which is not in line with what was just approved by the variance. It's limited. That does start to rub afoul a little bit.
In terms of address, does the Postal Service have anything to do with, do they take what we give them? Is that or what the Plan Commission decides?
Generally speaking, yeah, they're definitely, we provide the master addressing, and then certainly that information is provided to the post office, be it whatever postal service, in this case, it would be Whitestown, would provide that. Certainly it's, I don't want to understate the need to provide emergency services to properties and find people as quickly as possible if they do need things. But how that's done, I just don't have that information offhand to work through the different variables the 911 has used in the past to solve that question.
So this will go to the Plan Commission then?
Only through, for purposes of permitting. And so as the staff of the Plan Commission, which is the same people that are sitting in this room, we will help facilitate that very conversation.
So that'll be your job. You or your staff?
Our department, correct, yes.
All right. Did you get that, Mr. Flender? That's going to be the department here that will take care of that.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate it. I just wanted to clear that up. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Have a good evening.
That brings us to docket 2022-09-SE, special exception for J. Artman at 1580 North 800 East. That's an estimated address. You've been a patient bystander tonight.
Yeah.
Can you tell us, give us your name if you would, please, name and address, and then what you would like to do.
Yeah, John Artman, 8145 East, 200 North, Whitestown. Just wanting a special exception for personal residence and barn at 1580 North, 800 East.
And the special exception requirement is because of the size of the plot of land. Is that right? This is on 20 acres.
It's a special exception to permit the single family home act.
The family home and the ag.
Sorry.
Thank you. Questions for the petitioner? Hearing none. Is there anyone here who would like to speak for or against this? Yes, ma'am.
Also very patient, I think.
Yeah.
My legal name is Pamela Tudor Eman. And I don't believe the Fair Board here understands out there is about, I'm roughly guessing, about 6 or 7 country squares that we're not 4, 5, and 6 generation farms out there. Artman's, Tudors, Hendricks's, and there's quite a few of us out there, and we used to be really closely knit. And I really took pride in that, and I still do. And even you guys just approved trying to help that family with their, I think it was grandfather or something like that. I did that, and this family has done that. And I think there should be no question that this should be approved. And also another thing, I don't think you guys realize, if I stand, correct me if I'm wrong, don't you own all the land around that little piece of property? Don't you own all the land across the road? So there is no neighbors to be complaining. And to me, it's a no-brainer. It should go through because we are a close-knitted family out there. That 6 blocks of Country Square. And you're not city square, I'm talking country squares. Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, Mrs. Edman.
Just to confirm, you're approving this, this residence?
I strongly approve it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No one online, Mr. Rust? No. Okay. We have a staff report.
Yes, as the petitioner stated, they're requesting to put a single-family home on 20 acres. And as previous lady had stated, they own a lot of the surrounding property. So we worked with the petitioner to go really far out to find the adjacent property owners to notify. But other than that, the right to farm is required, and staff is in favor of the request.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? Hearing none, is there a motion?
I have a question for the petitioner.
I'm sorry, go right ahead.
I see that there's an existing barn on the site, and remind me, is your intention to tear that down and
No,
you're going to be leaving that?
yes,
And then, but you'll be building another barn
correct.
for animals or?
It'll be
machinery and-
a combination of ag and personal
I see.
use.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Would someone like to make a motion?
Sure. I move that docket number 2022-09-SE, a special exception petition in the agricultural district for the property located at 1580 North County Road 800 East, Whitestown, be approved based on the staff report and the proposed findings as presented. I would like to note that there is a right to farm acknowledgement that will need to be executed as part of this as well.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. Thank you, Mrs. Postaway. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It's approved. Good luck with your building project, Mr. Hartman.
So going back to an item we missed.
Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion to approve first-class mail as a noticing method for this meeting.
Second.
All right, for the newcomers, we typically had used registered mail during COVID when people didn't want to receive something from another person's hands. We've gone to first-class mail so that there's no knock at the door. So that's the purpose in requesting a change of practice.
A mail to, I'm sorry.
These are to the surrounding
I got it.
property
Okay.
owners
Yeah.
that would be affected by a petition. Motion's been made by Mr. Lake, seconded by Mr. Jones. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you. That, without anything else, I think brings us to the end of the meeting.
And I would just offer a plug for the next week's event, March 8th, 6 p.m. The sign that was here in the building or that room on that table I point at is now gone. Doesn't change the event, is still happening. It is the town council, specifically Joe Culp, will be hosting an event here at Town Hall next week, 6 p.m. To talk about a historic preservation commission and the creation of that to serve the town.
Is that Will that be the final? I think I just saw one online not long ago that he hosted or that he participated in. You know.
All right, so September 30th, there was a part one of that conversation. And that conversation at that time was focused specifically on what is called the village core. In 2021, Sullivan Muntz contracted with an individual who conducted a survey of 528, give or take, properties that comprise this area that was identified by this individual as something called the village core. And that information is online, the same website that hosts the ordinance that is for all 68 square miles of Zionsville. In September, certainly while it was a great project to talk about such a board to serve only the village core, I believe it was determined that the most defensible way to continue to conduct the conversation is to create a historic preservation commission that served the entire town. Therefore, then allowing that body to then determine through a process that would be identified by the town council as to create those specific districts, and those districts could be a singular property, any number of acreage, but nonetheless, that's what will be presented and discussed next week.
Thank you, Wayne.
Will there be Zoom capabilities? I mean, virtual capabilities?
Correct.
All right. If there's nothing further, this meeting is adjourned.